Testing. The purpose of this meeting is to provide an opportunity for public input on the proposed bylaw amendment of the Code of Use Bylaw 25-021. The proposed amending bylaw will be considered on January the 9th, 2026 at a special council meeting. I will now call on Tim Brubaker, Regional Clerk, to do the roll call.
Thank you. Regional Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig.
Present.
Councillor Erb. Present. Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Gowing.
Happy New Year.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Hunick.
Present.
Councillor James.
Present.
We have regrets from Councillor Liggett. Councillor McCabe.
Present.
Councillor Nowak.
Present.
Councillor Rodriguez.
Present.
Councillor Salonen.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Verbanovich.
Present.
And Councillor Wolf.
Present.
Thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, and the Chinootan peoples. In doing so, I want to reflect on what it means to be doing important community work like we are engaging in collectively today, and also in my own individual relationship to this land. As a settler, one of the most important aspects of my individual journey towards truth and reconciliation has been to listen. And I am continually grateful to a community that shares their stories and their concerns with me. As well as chair of the region, I know I carry a large responsibility to ensure that it is not just myself on an individual level listening and acting, but that as a government we are listening and creating action in the community. I'm offering this acknowledgement as one of the many actions that I am personally and that the region largely is taking on our journey towards reconciliation. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. Some of you may be wondering why we're wearing green squares, and that is to acknowledge a National Day of Remembrance for the Quebec City mosque attack, and we are wearing them today. I think the actual commemoration date is January the 29th. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, we're going to go to the delegations. We will ask the delegations to do their intervention as listed on the agenda, and I would like to remind all delegations of a few guidelines for participation. If you're attending in person, please proceed to the podium when you are called upon to speak. If you're attending virtually, please turn on your microphone and camera when called upon. You will have 5 minutes to speak if you registered before the deadline and 3 minutes if you registered afterwards. Additionally, some general reminders. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate removal from the meeting. Interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning on your camera at inappropriate times, or hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for the delegations. Please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and the ideas shared with us as community members. And a quick reminder to members of the audience, you are asked to maintain order. And this means you may not address council without the permission of the chair, interrupt anyone, disrupt the meeting with unreasonable noise or vocal expression, such as applause, booing, or cheering, and displays of signs or posters. So our first delegate tonight is Heidi Holmes from Waterloo. Heidi, welcome. I understand that you're appearing in person. Okay, I think Heidi's withdrawn. How about Laura Mosher from Kitchener? Laura, are you here?
Sorry, are you looking for Laura Coakley?
Laura Mosher.
Oh, Mosher, sorry.
Brooklyn Wallace. Brooklyn, I know you are here from Kitchener. Please come to the podium and you have 5 minutes.
There we go. Hi, I expected it to have a little bit more time to get everything ready and to hear some good delegations, but I am here to talk about the proposed amendment. I wanted to talk about this in a practical way. I know that the transit hub is going to get built. That's just going to happen, whether it is the region forcing people off the land or the province, it is going to happen. What we need to actually be doing, though, is focusing on the people who are there currently. As we all know, these are voters, or they can be voters. They are citizens of our region. There is a lot of talk in this report about the expenditure, and I have some questions that I know that other delegates will follow up on further about the actual cost and the cost and the budgeted amount of money to the encampment. But what I am most concerned about is that I don't think any of you know what it's like for the people who live there. I don't think that, I would say maybe, if any, one or two of you have actually ever gone down and spoken to the residents. Who has gone and spent hours meeting these people and learning who they are. Because I have, let alone some of my friends who have spent much more time. And even in the limited amount of time that I've spent there, I have seen the security guards that that the report talks so highly of, racially profile people and call the police on someone just walking around. Those of you who know me know that I do not exaggerate when I say that these security guards are not adding to the actual security of the encampment. What we need to be doing, because it will be, like, the current systems that we have to move people off of the space, and I will, as an aside, comment on the fact that the point in time count that was done when the bylaw was first enacted is, in my opinion, a ridiculous way to measure how many people are living on the site, because people come and go, especially over the winter. People leave, people come, and it doesn't make sense for it to be just a single point. What we need is an alternative location for this to be happening. Because no matter, like, unless you are actually going to fund the solution that actually building housing and actually giving these people shelter would actually be, unless we're going to do that, we need to find an alternative.
Brooklyn, you should see a yellow light, and that tells you you've got a minute left.
Yeah. We, as a region, need to be looking at a public camping bylaw or finding an alternative site for campers at this residence, because it is going to be the fastest way to solve the problem of the transit hub. Homelessness in general is not going to be solved by this proposed bylaw, obviously. So if the bylaw is about the transit hub and about building the railway and doing all of that, we need to think, what is the fastest solution and what is the most effective solution? And I believe that to be the public camping bylaw that I know other delegates will be mentioning tonight. But anything like that is the real solution to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooklyn, and great job. You finished right on time. I don't see any questions, and thank you for gathering yourself together to go first when you didn't think you were going to go first, because sometimes that can be unnerving. Benny Skinner from Waterloo. Benny, are you in the audience?
Hello, I'm here
Great.
on the screen.
The floor is yours, and you have 5 minutes.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for having me, everyone. You see me delegate previously. I just wanted to offer a few things. So one of the things that I'm sure people are going to cover a number of topics tonight, but I really want to advocate for a push to try and address this situation with as much dignity for the residents as possible and as much care as possible. There's a lot of issues with the way that this bylaw is written and the way that I think that the council is trying to approach the situation. For example, like trying to define a resident of this encampment using the idea of sedentarism rather than understanding people as mobile, fluid, might have nomadic tendencies is already a bias that exists in the way you're trying to accommodate people based on their their occupation, I guess, of this encampment. But I wanted to note that this region has such a wealth of resource in terms especially of, like, we have the universities here, we have knowledge, we have researchers, we have consultants, we have activists, we have so many amazing things in this region. And to be quite frank, I've been here for 10 years and I was super happy to live in Waterloo region. I'm super proud, and I'm starting to become less and less proud because I'm seeing us turn towards putting our resources into militarization rather than into development, into creating community, into supporting sustainable livelihoods. And when I speak to the topic of militarization, I'm talking specifically about increasing the police budget. For what? And we could be investing that money into sustainable housing solutions that help to address the homelessness crisis in our region. Like the number of people who are unhoused has doubled in the last 5 years, and we need to figure out how we're going to create sustainable communities and how we're going to make sure that people are treated with dignity and are cared for and have the resources that they need to thrive. Like this region can be so beautiful. It can be so lovely and wonderful. And I'm not saying it isn't, but we're sliding down a slippery slope of continuing to invest in things like police services rather than investing in social services, which will decrease the need for police services. I understand that this is a growing region. I understand that we're trying to meet the needs of a growing population in the region. But if we're not even meeting the needs of the people who already exist in the region, then we have a problem. There's a fundamental problem with governance when people's basic fundamental human rights are not met. The point of governance is to take our resources, to pool them, and then to make sure that people are able to live good lives. And right now, I don't feel like the budget is reflective of the priority of maintaining people's well-being and making sure that everybody's basic needs are met, right? We continue to try and move forward, to push forward and to develop without taking care of our most vulnerable. And that's like simply a violation of human rights. It's a failure of governance for us to act that way. And the last thing that I want to try not to take up too much time, but I wanted to dare the regional council to take, and I know it's a big ask and you probably won't do it, so this is me being optimistic, but I dare you to take the $20 million
remaining
budget increase requested for the Waterloo Regional Police. I dare you to take that money and set it aside for a sustainable housing project of some sort that addresses homelessness in a complex manner, that is backgrounded by research, that is backgrounded by public engagement, and that is backgrounded by care. Because I think we could do that. There is, you know, you look at places like Edmonton right now, they're looking at addressing their homelessness crisis by investing in modular home communities that also have social services there as like temporary or medium term housing for people who need it. So these are just ideas that we could put on the table. I have access to researchers, massive networks of people who are invested in sustainable housing, and I have connections at Grand River Modular. So please reach out if you want.
Thank you, Benny, and thanks for finishing right on time. We do have a question. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you, and not so much a question as a point of clarification or just information, because I've heard a number of times about investing in upstream types of programs, and we currently invest over $200 million more than what we're mandated to by the province, not the 20 million, 200 million. And those are all upstream programs. And so I just want to make sure that people understand that it's not that we're not investing there. That's almost the same amount as we invest in the police services. So investments have been made financially. So I just want to clear that up.
Thank you. I believe that's more of a statement than a question. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I have a question. If it's not a question, am I allowed to respond, or how does that work?
It wasn't a question, Benny. It was a statement. So no, we thank you for your delegation and your thoughtful comments. And I understand, is Laura Mosher now online? Or Heidi, sorry, is it Heidi Holmes? Are you online? Hi, Heidi. Welcome.
Hear
You
me?
have 5 minutes.
Oh, there I am. Hi.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. I understand I have 5 minutes to present, so I'll begin right away. I just wanted to present as I do work outside of the region as an emergency nurse. I do work with vulnerable populations, specifically doing sexual assaults and domestic violence care. But I am presenting as a citizen of the region since birth. I wanted to talk today about the bylaw amendment that is being proposed and how it relates to the Victoria Street encampment as well as other shelter sites around the region. So as we all know, the Victoria Street encampment started in early 2022. It grew quickly to over 60 tents and individual shelters. The region of Waterloo provided access to toilets for human rights purposes early on after the encampment was established. Further services were added through the years, including 24/7 security, routine garbage removal, rodent control, costing over $750,000 per year. In May 2022, the region made statement that encampment could pose a high safety risk and recommended and warned residents of an impending closure. However, as of January 2026, despite many further threats of closure, it has not happened. Waterloo Region Police Services spent more hours per capita in and around the encampment than any other residents in the region. Calls included fires, guns, well-being checks, etc. And in response to all of this, in June 2023, the Herb Street Road Hybrid Emergency Shelter was opened in response with the goal of, and I quote, providing a safe temporary place with 50 individual cabins where people can stay while they work to find housing. Since that Herbs Road Emergency Shelter opened, 50 residents eventually moved to the shelter, which provides housing but also many wraparound services. The total residents moving in, although not immediate, did fill up. The region allocates about $2.8 million annually as of 2025 to run this emergency shelter, which was planned on an operating 2-year time frame. However, only 18% or 19 people at the emergency shelter have moved into housing despite having had the opportunity to support to find housing. The average cost of a 2-bedroom apartment in the region of Waterloo as of 2025 was about $2,500 a month. So to put these 19 residents sharing about 10 apartments would cost about $300,000 a year, way less than the allocation for either Victoria Street or the Herb Street Road encampment. So why do we not just move residents into apartments? Well, we know that many of the residents have mental health and addictions issues. As quoted in the summary of the Herbs Road encampment, there is ongoing challenges with participant mental health and substance use, reinforcing a need for increased supports in these areas. Despite these wraparound services being offered to residents of these encampments and other services such as the former safe consumption site, services generally had very low uptake. Mandates such as saving lives through reducing overdose deaths, reducing spread of infectious diseases, and connecting people with mental health and addiction supports, as well as services including housing, have had significantly insignificant difference. So the decision to change the bylaw as proposed says they want to defer the vacant possession date to April 1st, to remove the offense provision of the bylaw of charging for trespassing, and to establish a transition process. As a speaker today, I would propose to not amend the bylaw as proposed because it would only increase costs and not make any significant changes for those living there. We have deferred many times before and nothing has improved. We are already losing money on the investment. Years have passed in which a transition process could have and was already made. And those who advocate for the residents and their safety, if being moved off, are not well enough considering the safety of those same residents who live there. Fire, sexual assault, child endangerment, theft, assault are all real risks that continue to occur and are less likely if individuals do not live in encampments. As quoted by the Canadian Human Rights Commission, encampments are not a safe or sustainable solution for housing. For people living in these encampments, every day is a matter of life or death. So I understand I just have a minute left. I'll close by saying we should not stigmatize those who live in encampments, and we should provide human rights to them. However, with rights come responsibilities. If they are capable and deemed as such to make decisions for themselves, we should not be providing additional services that we don't provide to any other citizens who also have those rights. So although I appreciate your empathy and desire to help, as per the region's own data, the services are not being utilized as planned. We as taxpayers are paying a lot of money to run a shelter and encampment that are not meeting their mandates. Please consider the evidence and not your feelings when making decisions about bylaw and encampment, and understand that the money put into this could be used to provide other services that do work and are evidence-based. Sometimes doing nothing, although uncomfortable, is doing something. The data shows that this is not helping. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Heidi. I see no questions. The next presenter is Tanner Bergsma. Tanner, welcome to the podium, and the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of this council and committee, and to members of the public. My name is Tanner Bergsma. I actually am a member of the Economic Development Advisory Committee for the City of Kitchener, and I have had the honor of being able to work with the constituents of Kitchener for the past year and a half. I'm approaching you today from two different aspects. I'm approaching you from a responsibility as a road leader, but I'm also approaching you from a perspective of somebody that used to be homeless as well. With everything that I have done over the past little while, I have interviewed quite a fair bit of members of our public in terms of the different kinds of concerns that were being expressed. One of them being that I don't believe that it is currently in our best interest to be, we're saying until April for our, we're saying until April for the deadline to be. I don't think that that is going to be a feasible deadline given the already social burdens that our people are facing, and I would request that council perhaps consider June. I would also like to bring up some statistics because this is a long-term issue. We can try to solve this problem short-term, but the reality of it is that we have over 71.3% of our entire homeless population that even at full capacity, our people are not going to be able to obtain shelter or housing. So that is just a stark reality that we're facing. We know that this region has faced cuts when it comes down to provincial budgets, and you know, we can only do what we can with the budgets that we have. With that being said, it has been shown that this region has put $1.6 million so far into the investments from 2025 budgets alone when it came down to site maintenance and housing costs. And so we know that with every dollar invested into social and sustainable housing, that we can get back up to $5 in our economy. So knowing that we are facing a lack of space and shelter, I would request an additional amendment if I may, that we can create an additional $320,000 to be put towards a warming shelter for those that are experiencing homelessness into that encampment. If you're looking from a perspective of being able to get them out more quicker, but you're looking for help with transitionary costs, I think that this is going to be a somewhat of a temporary alternative to provide them at least a temporary transitional aspect to get them having a safe place to stay. We do have many different partnered organizations like the Working Center who can help with that. And that can provide us with up to 50 people. And so I am hoping that for the better sake of our communities, that you can consider creating at least that, because the region has a responsibility for social housing. The EDAC committee supports, we have a fund that we support our land and stuff like that, and we will delegate and we'll continue to represent and delegate resources as need be to support our sustainable and social housing. But when it comes down to the region's responsibility, I would request that that slight amendment be made. How long do I have? A minute and 38 seconds. Some of the other concerns that were brought before by the constituents were additional supports for mental health. We know that the social workers who are already there are already overburdened, and they're working in a system that they're working with limited resources. So even if we're expecting them, for example, to put all of their resources, we're relying on them to house these people, but they're working with limited capacity, limited resources. And so it creates a real stark problem that we might not be able to have them to fix this problem. This is a systemic issue, and we know that. So with that being said, though, we need more mental health supports. We need more social workers who are able to be there on site to help serve as a mediation between both homelessness individuals and those that are social workers, to be able to essentially provide additional supports, because it can be overwhelming for one social worker or two social workers even to be able to deal with this individual. I do support the removal of the fine. I don't know why we were talking about this in the first place, personally, but again, I guess I have only 30 seconds to wrap up. I would just request that additional amendment to be made in terms of that shelter fund, because I think in order for us to really transition these individuals safely and securely, we need to be able to have an additional fund where they have a place to stay. Otherwise, we're going to move to a different encampment, and we're going to be dealing with the same issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanner. I don't see any questions. For any other speakers who come up, there will be a yellow light that goes on the podium, and that will signify that you've got 1 minute left. I feel it's somewhat less intrusive than me saying it, but Tanner, you were perfect in your timing, so thank you. I understand that our first delegate, or second, Laura Mosher from Kitchener. Laura, are you here? Okay, you make your way to the podium and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. In part, I'm here to ask you, what's the fucking point of this? Sorry, I know you can't respond, and I know this is supposed to be a respectful space. I just hope you're paying attention to me now. On April 23rd last year, you didn't listen to delegates. It wasn't surprising. Only a few people, mostly those perceived as experts, were asked follow-up questions. Anyone watching online won't see it, but those of us here in person can remember councillors talking over delegations. We even watched a member of council fall asleep. You claim you are listening so carefully, but it feels like everything this council says has been decided upon already in closed meetings. Why now are we getting a performance of wanting public input? The people working for the region sent a wave of fear through residents at 100 Vic by dropping a trailer on site. There was no consultation then. Only an email sent to those that asked, with an update later that day to the region website that explained. It told those of us, at least those who could go online, that there was a proposed bylaw. It was the first anyone had heard of it. You've been informed you're violating human rights by 2 judges now. Valente gave a specific procedure for how to get his decision changed. Instead, this council has decided to try every trick in the book to circumvent it. tweaking a few words to an ill-conceived bylaw, which was inhumane to begin with, doesn't solve the fundamental problem of feeling that we can't trust you as elected officials and we can't trust any of the senior staff advising you. This council has lost all trust that any of you will work with politically active constituents in good faith. Even media statements are suspect. According to a statement from the Waterloo region on May 29th, maintenance workers were blocked from accessing garbage bins and portable toilets at Kitchener encampment. It was later changed to remove the reference to portable toilets being blocked because that part of the region's statements was factually untrue. They had been serviced at the crack of dawn as per usual. The region's statement claims advance notice was provided to those in site in preparation for this cleanup. Notices that were ominously stuck directly onto people's tents, which stated Pure Clean would come sometime this week, with no specific date or time actually listed. The press releases, the staff recommendations that ignore judges, the way that Petch was ignored, the police budget vote, it tells me you won't engage with the public. The press, how dare you mock democracy with vote reversals after an unwanted outcome? I want to believe it was a mistake and not a reconsideration. But there are so many reasons not to trust that anything meaningful will come from exhausting myself by participating in this supposedly democratic process. Has anyone forgotten Wilmot?
I see no questions, so thank you for coming in to delegate. I'm going to caution the audience, no clapping. You can do jazz hands, which some of you have been here before, and that is acceptable, so thank you. Laura Croakley from Kitchener. Laura, are you in the audience?
No, I'm here virtually.
Super, okay. You have the floor and you have 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chair Redmond. My name is Laura, and I'm here to speak about the proposed amendment to the bylaw to remove people from 100 Victoria Encampment. I want to be transparent with the unique position that I come here with tonight. I do work in the housing stability system, but I want to emphasize that I'm here as a concerned citizen who drives by the 100 Victoria Encampment on a weekly basis. I speak with our community members who are living outside and the realities that they have to live with. Anything that I share tonight is publicly accessible information. I found all of this information online through media outlets, regional or shelter websites, and press releases. The 2023 Valenti court decision centered on individuals who would have their rights violated if they were moved from 100 Vic encampment. Without enough emergency shelter beds for individuals at this encampment, their rights to life, liberty, and security of person would be violated. I think we need to look back at this ruling to inform the proposed amendment to this bylaw. There have been projections in the media recently of the number of emergency shelter beds being 377 total to 500 for men and 66 for women and gender diverse individuals. As well, just a few days ago, one article stated that there were only 674 beds in shelters, which included overnight warming centers. But these are all incorrect. They're all incorrect projections that need to be looked at more accurately and intentionally. As outlined online, there are 3 emergency shelters for men in Waterloo region. There's Cambridge Shelter, there's Shelter Care with House of Friendship, and there's Ship Shelter. According to each of these shelters' websites or information found online, Cambridge Shelter has 80 beds, Shelter Care has 100 beds, and Ship has 30 beds. This means that specifically for men, there are 213 emergency shelter beds within our shelter system. There are then 2 emergency shelters for women and gender diverse individuals in Waterloo region. This is YW Cambridge, and this is another Ship Shelter. YW Cambridge has 20 beds, and Ship Shelter has 22 beds. That means that there are 42 emergency shelter beds dedicated to women and gender diverse individuals in Waterloo region. There's then One Roof, which provides emergency shelter for youth 16 to 25 years old. There are 18 beds for all genders, and there are overflow into the winter months. And then lastly, there is the outdoor shelter, also known as Herb Street Cabins, that has 50 single units for all genders. There's Bridge Care that has 20 beds for individuals who are experiencing homelessness and have medically complex needs. And there's Safe Haven that has 10 beds for youth 12 to 18 up till their 18th birthday. And that's it. That's all of our emergency shelters. The total of all of those emergency shelters, all of the emergency shelters in Waterloo Region, is 353. This is important to know when you're advocating for or against removing people from encampments. If you say that they have somewhere to go, it's important to know that a lot of the time they don't. Moreover, when you break down who is able to access these beds by gender, situation, age, there's only a certain number of beds available. For example, if you're a 50-year-old man who wants to stay in Cambridge because you have resources or connections to that community, there are 80 beds at Cambridge Shelter that you might be able to access. If you're a 23-year-old woman, there are 18 beds available at One Roof that you might be able to access. If you just had your leg amputated and you've been living outside for 5 months, there are 20 beds at Bridge Care that you might be able to access. This further context is important when looking at how many beds are available and who they're for. This, of course, after all that, it doesn't take into consideration how many of these 353 beds are actually available when someone is in need of one. We know from interviews in the media that shelters are consistently near or at capacity on a nightly basis. So for us to say that encampments can be disbanded, people can be removed because everyone has some sort of option, this just isn't the reality. I'm going to end with that the realities of what people are experiencing when encampments are broken up is so important when we look at and say what is available to support them within our system. We need to be intentional when we say that there are shelter beds and provide accurate information for when there isn't. We need to be intentional in how we ask our community members who are living in encampments with what they need, and we need to be intentional in how we invest in solutions to our growing homelessness crisis in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. I see no questions. Thank you for your delegation. Kathy Eckert from Kitchener. Kathy, are you here? Kathy, welcome to the podium, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you for letting me speak today. Let's be honest about this. Our Premier Doug Ford wrote you guys a verbal IOU. If you dismantle the encampments, he'll give you money for a shelter. Where I come from, that's called putting the cart before the horse. We should try more of putting the horse before the cart, so to speak. Build shelters, then dismantle the encampments like the court asked you to. And I ask the people here to stay open-minded about this. It's who I learned it from to help. I was taught in the Alberta Mental Health PAC system by not just the police officers, but psychologists and lawyers, and everyone born is born and considered a member of the community, not because of their finances, but because they are a person first and foremost before the law. Our homeless people are part of this community. Those with mental illness, yeah, I know you know, and mental health issues, those with disabilities are part of this community. Going back in history, our government and some members of society has an appalling track record of who they decide is a part of the community based on monetary values. People, including the trans community, the gay community, and the First Nations community, neurodivergent, still fight to be a member of this community. One of the most important aspects of rights is everyone comes from decision-making, personal care. As long as the person does not provide them with health care or residential or social training or support service for pay. This was done to ensure that there is not a conflict of interest when it comes to personal care decisions. This has also been a problem where I've heard the government, we will care for you. You are to provide residential care only, nothing more to these people. The region took out funding for affordable housing this year, yet has the audacity of wanting public input on where the homeless community members should go. I suggest that the region of Waterloo must first acknowledge any person, regardless of age or income or sexual identity or housing status, as a member of this community, simply because they will not always be a person because they will always be a person first and foremost before and under law. That's how the local legal claim their legal representatives who has the authority to act in their best interest, because they acknowledge that the homeless people are part of this community, regardless of personal opinion. If your personal opinion or beliefs differ from the laws, then change your personal opinion. Abide by the law. That homeless people, like all people, are part of the community because they are born into the community from birth. I denounce this bylaw since it violates citizens' rights to fundamental justice due to upcoming court hearings on prior bylaw. Maybe our government will be a law-abiding member of the community and uphold the court ruling that says build shelters first, then evict the homeless from encampments. Set and lead by example for a safer municipality. Our homeless are citizens of this country, Canada, and citizens of this community. Members of Waterloo Region, where is your humanity as our government towards our citizens who are unhoused?
Thank you very much, Kathy, for delegating. I don't see any questions, so thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Okay, good girl, let's go.
Next delegation is Megan Snyder from Kitchener. Megan, are you here? The floor is yours, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. It feels very disappointing, exhausting, and frankly embarrassing to be here yet again on a Wednesday night, having to defend the human rights of people in our region. Despite the fact that we spend almost as much on upstream services as we do on the police budget, not necessarily a persuasive fact, you have a lineup of your constituents waiting to defend the rights of unsheltered people to exist with autonomy and self-determination, and to assert that perhaps the right to shelter is more important than a construction staging ground. It feels even more exhausting to reckon with the strong feeling that the voices of your constituents and these passionate delegations don't really matter at all because decisions seem to be made behind closed doors, in advance of or in spite of public input, or within muddled processes such as what took place in your December 16th meeting. Indeed, a mockery of democracy. It's disappointing that we are talking about this bylaw again while you are in the middle of litigation about it, and in the middle of a court-granted injunction, and after mediation failed, as if these paltry, and some might say bad faith amendments, change the essence of the bylaw in any way. For example, your amendment to, quote, remove the offense provision for the bylaw, recognizing that it is the region's objective to obtain vacant possession and not to penalize the marginalized persons on the property. That sounds really great, almost like you're not criminalizing poverty. But if this bylaw goes through and the encampment is cleared, anyone remaining on the property can still be arrested and charged up to $10,000 under the Ontario Trespass to Property Act. I know you can't change laws put in place by the provincial government, but you do have the power to change the circumstance and to truly not penalize the marginalized persons on the property by offering the only amendment to this bylaw that would be meaningful: an alternative location for all residents of 100 Victoria, and a bylaw that would allow designated areas for public camping. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I see no questions. The next delegation is Chikar Droog. Welcome to the podium, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. My name is Jakara. I think we need to be clear from the outset that these amendments are being proposed in the middle of active litigation about whether the original bylaw was constitutional to begin with. Rather than waiting for the courts to determine whether this council acted lawfully, you're attempting to amend the bylaw after the fact without meaningfully addressing the constitutional deficiencies that led to the litigation in the first place. This feels like an act of bad faith, and it feels underhanded. And your order of operations is deeply flawed. I want to speak now directly to the region's January 5th info session for residents of 100 Vic and to the claim that residents were adequately informed. I went to the site on January 5th. I spoke with 11 residents. 10 of them had no idea that a poster existed and had not heard about the input session at all. What I found on site was a single piece of paper, not laminated, posted in a location residents rarely go. To reach it, I had to trudge through deep snow. The paper was wet. The edges were completely curled inward to the point where I could not read it until I physically unfurled it. It's unacceptable to call this adequate communication, and it's deeply offensive for several reasons. This approach, for starters, is deeply ableist and inaccessible. It assumes literacy. It assumes everyone has good vision. It assumes people can walk through deep snow or that they should risk soaking their only shoes and socks just to access critical information about their lives. Failing to laminate the notice in the midst of winter virtually guarantees it will not survive. The notice also instructs residents to email the region if they have questions or need support attending the drop-in. This is profoundly out of touch. It assumes people have phones. It assumes they can keep those phones charged and that they have access to power. It assumes they can afford data or Wi-Fi. It assumes a level of stability that simply does not exist. Telling unhoused people to just email is not relational engagement. It is bureaucratic indifference. There is also no verbal outreach or direct communication with regards to that info session. If I place an important legal document somewhere in your backyard without telling you it exists, how can it be your responsibility to know that it's even there? This communication method seems designed to set residents up for failure while allowing you to claim later in court that you've notified people. Even setting process aside, the amendment itself remains constitutionally deficient. It creates two classes of unhoused people, some that you deem worthy of minimal consideration and others rendered entirely disposable. And the amendment still fails to identify any alternative camping locations or safe tenting spaces for the 2,371 plus unhoused folks. The reality is that either the region designates another encampment location or people will choose for you. Not having another option is not an option. This situation will continue to replicate itself because the underlying systemic failures remain unaddressed. Continuing down this path is untenable, especially when you know there are no viable options. Overall, this input meeting is performative. It feels like a colossal waste of our time because this council has already demonstrated that it's willing to act first and worry about legality later, and that you're unwilling to compromise, we saw that with mediation, and that it does not meaningfully care what directly impacted people have to say. It is abundantly clear that constitutionality was never the priority, and that clearing the site was. I reject these amendments. They do not go far enough to make the bylaw constitutionally compliant, humane, or defensible. I urge council to reject them as well and to appeal the bylaw. For you, this might be about optics and to save face, but for others, this is their lives. And I think we need to remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jakara. I see no questions. Kenyava Dimri? Okay. The next delegation, Leslie Crompton, Waterloo. Leslie, are you in the audience? Welcome, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Council. I'm Leslie Crompton, a resident of the region, a co-creator working on the plan to end chronic homelessness, and an advocate that supports individuals during encampment evictions. Too much time, energy, and money, both regional and community, have been spent on this bylaw rather than addressing the underlying problems and solving homelessness. This bylaw change will not eliminate encampments, reduce the number of individuals living rough, or clear 100 VIC before April 1st, 2026. The newly proposed individual housing plan option is only for the 2 to 4 individuals, the number varies, that were resident on April 16th, 2025. All other residents are not eligible for this support. Recently, I was involved in the Cambridge eviction of 2 older women, 50 plus, with medical issues. These women had been working with regional outreach and service providers such as Starling, Housing Partner, for months, yes, months, leading up to the eviction date. Paperwork was done, they were on all the appropriate waiting lists, their income was verified, their ID confirmed, eligibility for shelter confirmed, and other supports validated. These are all tasks that are on an individual housing plan, amongst others. Everyone did their part, and I will thank all of the outreach workers and service providers for their hard work during that time. Yet on eviction date, there were no housing options, emergency shelter or otherwise, for these women. Ultimately, the Unsheltered campaign, of which I'm a member, put them up in a hotel for 3 nights until shelter space became available. I want everybody to be aware that the shelter space became available as the shelter provider in Cambridge was given funding for 5 more beds at the same time as the eviction. Both women remain at the shelter and continue to work on their individual housing plan as a condition of having a bed in the shelter. I got my slide, okay. The slide shows that current statistics show that the average shelter stay is 208 days, or approximately 7 months. So at least 7 months to move from emergency shelter to permanent housing using an individual housing plan. These individual housing plans are not a new concept to the region and have been in use for years, decades, by the region's service provider. The only new aspect is it now will be written and shared. Historically, IHPs have not been provided to the residents in writing. So finally, the residents will have a written document of their plan and what they're agreeing to. They can then share this document with trusted individuals to ensure they understand what they're agreeing to and can be supported accordingly. Next slide, thank you. The average shelter occupancy rate is 95%, as per this slide, which comes from the region. 95% of the beds, so the 353, are filled every night. It is important to highlight, and it's been highlighted earlier, that the vacant beds are not necessarily interchangeable due to gender and age. There are also no new shelters or housing service providers opening between now and March 31st, 2026. So, could the 2 to 4 residents that reside at 100 Vic as of April 16th get a bed and move before April 1st? Possibly, as long as the alternative accommodation meets their needs. They aren't on the service restrictions list, need specialized medical care, have a partner or a pet. Sorry. The other individuals, well, we'll just see what happens to them. So, given this clause and what I've just shared with you in terms of statistics, people will be residing at 100 Vic on March 31st, 2026. I ask Regional Council, come March 31st, 2026 at 11:59 p.m., how will you be removing these people, these human beings, from 100 Victoria? Violently with police, arrest, and bulldozers? Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I hope you got through your whole slide deck to it.
I didn't, but take a look
Yeah, we have received it, thank you. The next delegation is Preston Parson. Oh, sorry, that delegate has withdrawn. Then Rob Deutschman from North Dumfries. Rob, are you in attendance?
Yes, I am. Hello, Madam Chair, council staff, or affectionately former colleagues and the two new guys. I'll just start out, I will be short. I've provided information, and I just want to point out to council that the last two presentations from Jakara and Tanavia provided some significant information that I think council needs to seriously consider when they're approaching this, particularly with respect to what's going to happen or what may happen in the courts. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I urge you to reconsider the proposed bylaw amendments for 100 Vic and instead seek guidance from the court as more information and clearer timelines for the Kitchener Central Transit Hub become available. First, the courts have already provided a framework for addressing the issues at 100 Vic. In 2023, Justice Valenti declared the existing bylaw inoperative when the number of homeless persons exceeds available accessible shelter beds. This decision emphasized the need for a court-supervised approach to ensure compliance with charter rights. The region initiated both court actions and should continue to work within the court process, respecting the rulings it sought from Justice Valenti and later from Justice Gibson. The region should return to court to demonstrate any changes in circumstances rather than attempting to legislate around this ruling. Second, Justice Gibson's recent injunction highlights ongoing concerns with the bylaw's validity. The court identified procedural flaws, including inadequate consultation and notice, and emphasized the need for a full evidentiary review. Advancing new amendments without addressing these issues risks further legal challenges and delays. And third, the region's project timeline for the transit hub raises questions. The site remediation scheduled for late 2025 has passed, casting doubt on the reliability of the construction timeline. Metrolinx has indicated potential changes in the construction schedule, which underscores the need for flexibility. This evolving situation allows for a thoughtful, court-guided approach that aligns with both legal obligations and project milestones. Returning to court offers several advantages. One is legal certainty. A court-supervised process ensures that any actions taken are compliant with existing legal standards and charter rights. Second, public confidence. Engaging with the court demonstrates a commitment to transparency and fairness, building trust with the community. And third, flexibility. As more information and clearer timelines become available, the court can provide tailored guidance that reflects the current situation and needs. The region's objective to develop the Central Transit Hub is important and shared by many. However, the means to achieve this must be lawful and procedurally fair. By pausing the bylaw amendments and seeking court guidance, the region can ensure that its actions are both effective and just. I respectfully urge council to reject the bylaw approach and return to court for guidance on next steps. This path not only respects the rule of law, but also aligns the region's goals for a successful transit hub development. Thank you. I wish you all the best in 2026. Good to see you all. Remote see you all.
Thanks, Rob. I see no questions. Thank you for your delegation. The next delegate is Abe Ferre. Welcome, Abe, to the podium, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. I'm a longtime resident and, frankly, a frustrated taxpayer. I'm here tonight not just as a citizen, but as one of the many people whose taxes fund every decision made in this chamber. I'm here to voice my frustration regarding the ongoing situation at 100 Victoria Street North site. We seem to have a never-ending bureaucratic merry-go-round funded by the taxpayer. The intent of this land has been decided, a vital piece of regional transit infrastructure, a central hub. This is not a park. This is not a temporary shelter site. Let me highlight some of the cost. $793,944 was the cost to maintain this encampment last year. This figure does not include social support staff, outreach workers, and bylaw staff who attend the site regularly. The encampment has been there nearly 4 years. Do the math. This already cost taxpayers millions. Ongoing legal fees. The legal back and forth in Superior Court regarding this site is costing the region substantial sums of money. On April 7th, 2023, the Record ran an article stating the region of Waterloo spent more than $168,000 on encampment injunction legal fees. How much more has been spent since then? Who's paying for this? We are. Some of the language in the bylaw and amendment proposals should concern every taxpayer in the city. I'll give some examples. Removing the provisions to use Trespass to Property Act for charging or removing residents, focusing instead on transition protocol. I understand not charging residents because it's unlikely fines will ever be paid, but not removing people that are trespassing? The Trespass to Property Act is a basic tool for any landowner, public or private, to manage their property boundaries. Removing this mechanism disarms the city's ability to enforce its own rules on its own land. Some of the wording regarding transition support. We're offering residents transportation, including personal belongings, to alternative accommodation, and coverage for up to 6 months, storage of any additional personal belongings that cannot be taken to alternative accommodation at the same time. All at no cost to the resident. What about the cost to the taxpayer? What happens after 6 months when they can't pay for further storage? Are we willing to pay for storage indefinitely? Motel or shelter placements. The bylaw states for a resident who accepts an offer and is placed in a motel or emergency shelter, it is expected that they will be able to remain in such temporary shelter until the space becomes available in transitional housing or affordable supportive housing. For further clarity, the region shall refer a resident back to USWs to make best efforts to resolve any issues or find different alternative accommodation in the event a resident loses alternative accommodation due to noncompliance with rules. When I requested to speak here this evening, I was sent a list of rules to follow and given a specific amount of time I was allowed to speak. I accept those terms, but in the case of the residents, we tell them if you can't follow the rules of the housing that we provide, we will find a different place for you. Unfortunately, I see no conditions of sobriety required to qualify for this seemingly endless offer of housing. This is an open-ended financial commitment. We're essentially guaranteeing indefinite motel or emergency shelter stays at taxpayer expense. This is not a housing strategy. It's a blank check for temporary fixes. Look, I appreciate the need for compassion, but at what point is it enough? As a taxpayer, I say we're well beyond that point. We need action. The community expects the council to be capable stewards of public land and public funds. Decisiveness is a key part of that stewardship. Council, we need clear enforceable rules regarding public land use. I urge you to vote against amendments that facilitate further delays and spending more tax dollars. Instead, pass a final, firm, and enforceable bylaw. Show us you respect the citizens and provide the funding for the city and region. Thank you.
Thank you, Abe. Councillor Craig, do you have a question?
Question?
Abe, Councillor Craig has a question. Go ahead.
I just want to thank you because you
Going to ask the audience to please hold your thoughts.
I do want to thank you because you present a point of view that the public needs to hear. Everybody wants to see this solved, but everybody needs to understand there's another point of view here, which you have, I think, in a very nice way and a very constructive way presented to us, and I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd ask for quiet in the gallery, please. The next delegate is Ryan Murdoch from Kitchener. Ryan, are you in the audience? The podium is yours, and you have 5 minutes.
It's interesting that we're just letting people make statements. Like, does procedure not get followed? It's bizarre. It's frustrating to be here. The original bylaw was grotesque. This amendment, they seem very disingenuous. It's not really going to solve anything. You guys still have that legal court battle going on. And it seems like you're actually working against yourselves almost, doing all this, because it's clearly like in bad faith. You've had so much time to deal with the problem, and you've essentially refused to do any of the fundamental work that would go into getting people housed. It's all stopgaps. Like, I disagree with almost anything he said, but like the motels, right? Like, that isn't a real solution. You basically spend money to fund really crap hotels that I can only assume, like, I don't know. A ton of money gets spent on that site. I don't know if you guys ever visit, but it just gets wasted. Like, there's been a trailer there. So I don't know who, like, is the brother-in-law that owns that company, but there's been a trailer there that literally doesn't even get used maybe once a week. Like, an absurd waste of money. So you guys need to do something about the encampment, pass a public camping bylaw. Then you're at least maybe in control of it a bit, because like, people actually need a place to go where they don't think people are just gonna destroy all their belongings, destroy their tent. I'm not saying people want to be in tents, obviously no one does, right? But when that's your last resort, being under threat of having your home demolished all the time, like, just think about that. Like, think about being under the threat of having your home demolished at any time, and like how you'd want to live with that. Like, if you'd want your family to live with that, your grandparents, your children. Like, none of us hopefully want that for anybody. Like, have some empathy beyond your immediate circle and see people as human beings and let them have a place to exist. Because even if you get this, like, then what? Are we building more shelters? Do people have more places to go? I know from dealing with both Waterloo and Kitchener, affordable housing isn't happening soon enough. So it's literally just going to grow. So after you don't deal with this, next summer, you're going to have an encampment somewhere else. And then you're probably just going to give the police money to bulldoze it. But like, you have a chance to show some compassion, show some actual, like, bold leadership. Oh, boldish, right? Because bold would have been 2-3 years ago, doing something to, like, help people instead of just kicking the ball along and waiting for the province to use the notwithstanding clause to get rid of it so you can pretend you tried. Because that's what this really feels like at this point. And it's super frustrating. And I know you don't want to think of yourselves as, like, bad people, but, like, at a certain point, history is going to remember you. Well, I mean, it's regional. History is not really going to remember it. But the parts that do, right, some local historian, you're going to be on the, like, wrong side of that. You're going to be the people who did nothing, and everyone's mad at you. So err on the side of compassion, err on the side of giving people some human dignity. And yeah, I don't know. It's so frustrating that we're all here wasting time and money debating stuff that, like, the court already told you don't do this. Bananas. So, yeah. Pass a public camping bylaw, stop this charade, stop this farce, and then focus on getting people affordable housing and then getting people help. And yeah, getting people help isn't always easy, especially when you've left them on the street for how like, knows long. Like, oh, they don't just readjust. And also sobriety. Like, bro, everyone in university is, like, drunk and stuff right now. Like, what? I don't even understand it. So it's so frustrating. I'm so frustrated with you guys. So, yeah. Any statements?
So Ryan, are you concluding your delegation?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Madam Chair.
Councillor Craig.
Well, I appreciate, the point blank approach. I take exception with the fact that you don't think there's any compassion or caring here on behalf of Regional Council.
So, Councillor Craig, we're not here to debate the delegation.
I realize that, but this kind of insults and ridicule has got to stop.
Okay, then let your voting record demonstrate compassion.
My voting record demonstrates.
I'm going to ask that we will conclude those remarks, Councillor Craig, and thank you very much for coming in. You can take your seat. The next delegation
Get judged by your actions.
is, okay, you can take your seat. Thank you very much, Ryan. The next delegation is virtual, and it's Maria Karakokolas.
Karen Nicholas. Sorry, I know my name is a hard one. Thank you.
Maria, go ahead.
sorry.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So, hi, everyone. My name's Maria Karen Nicholas, and this is really important. So, I'm just going to be reading off my laptop so that I don't miss anything. I'm a second-year Master's of Environment and Business student at the University of Waterloo, and I want to preface this by saying that while my address is in Guelph, because I'm grandfathered into a lease and can't afford rent in Waterloo, I am part of the Waterloo Region community. I work here, I study here, my partner lives here, and I care deeply, deeply about this place and spend a lot of money here. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to express my opinions today. Now, I'm technically not a resident, even though I'm in Waterloo almost every other day, but that doesn't mean life or death for me. Unfortunately for the folks who found sanctuary at 100 Vic after April 16th, 2025, the term resident means a lot more. And that is because they are not considered residents in this bylaw amendment. They're not considered at all, and they are human beings who must be considered because the housing crisis and cost of living crisis didn't end on the arbitrary date of April 16, 2025, and it's not going to end on April 1st, 2026, which is the proposed eviction date in this bylaw. I urge you to return to the court for guidance and vote no on this bylaw. Now, it's -3 degrees right now, and it's cold, it's wet, it's raining. In the summer, the temperatures and the humidity are unbearable. There's smoke from wildfires, people are dehydrated. It's not ideal to be outside. And with climate change, I can tell you that it is only going to get worse, which is why we need to invest in long-term solutions. But right now, the residents at 100 Vic still feel that they have more dignity, autonomy, and safety staying outside in the encampment than using the resources that the region provides and funds. And I say resources very lightly, because there are not many. And if a resource does not recognize the intersectional needs of the people that it's meant to serve and assist, that resource in the system wholeheartedly fails. And that's not a reflection on the 100 Vic residents or any person that's facing housing precarity. It's not selfishness, it's not being uncooperative. It is a reflection of a glaring reality that this region has seriously failed its people. And I'm not naive. I know that there are many factors that have contributed to this, provincially and federally as well. But I want to focus on what you can do as elected officials with power. We've talked a lot about funding, and there is a need for investments in community-led solutions. I'm not a housing expert, but I don't need to be to see that the shelters are at capacity. The mutual aid networks and volunteers who have been holding space for the unhoused community are exhausted. The numbers don't lie. There is nowhere for people to go. There are people here today who have offered to consult you and who have proposed real solutions, and they work with and for the unhoused community. So I'm urging you to please listen to them, listen to the people who have been working with and for the 100 Vic residents, not the police officers or bylaw officers who criminalize them. There is a grave need for an immediate solution, and you all have the power to be a part of that. You have a power to do the right thing. You can wait for the court decision and respect the rule of law. You can reject this amendment and repeal the bylaw. You can pass a public camping bylaw and approve an alternative site. There's something that you can do really, really easily, all of these things. And we have a national housing crisis. This won't be solved overnight, but if you listen to the people working on the ground, we can fund community-driven solutions, not just motels, and we can respect the autonomy of the unhoused folks in this region so that they have real support and dignity. It won't repair the harm that's been done, but it's a great start. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Maria. I have no questions. The next delegation is Robbie Solway from Kitchener. Robbie, are you here? Welcome to the podium. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, so my partner and I just moved to the region in September. And we moved here in large part because of the friendliness, warmth, and welcomingness that was shown to us by so many of the people here. And we've really appreciated the community here and how many people care so deeply about this place. So learning more about the plans to evict the residents of 100 Vic has been deeply upsetting and enraging. We are all neighbors here. I think about, again, how warm and welcoming people have been to my partner and I, and the stark contrast to how cold and unwelcoming this council is being towards people who have been in the region for much, much longer than us. So I'm asking you to stop this bylaw and institute safe tenting spaces. And just to say that the council members, I'm new here, but the council members we've heard make comments today and which kinds of exceptions to decorum have been allowed are giving me a bit of an impression of which residents, which perspectives this council functionally cares about and which they don't. Do we want to be a place that cares about all its people, all its residents? So as the region builds up infrastructure, like the transit hub, I urge you, leave no one behind, especially those that have already been left behind for so long. I urge you to share this region with all of your neighbors, our neighbors, and end this cruelty. And I just want to echo Benny, I believe it was Benny's call to reallocate the $20 million increase to the police budget to community resources and to affirm that call as a critical piece of action and to reallocate it to community resources, housing security, and to rapidly expand community supports to come even somewhat close to what we need. I'm also here as somebody who works in food security, which we know is itself in crisis. And we also know that one of the worst things we can do for food insecurity is increasing housing insecurity. Displacement, community division, instability, this is cruelty. This is cruelty towards our community, our neighbors. And it is cruel to think that we would tolerate this, let alone facilitate it as this eviction process would do. Please respect human rights and reject the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. I have no questions. The next delegation is Lynn Intini. Lynn, are you here? Welcome to the podium, and you have 5 minutes.
You'll have to forgive me. My notes are a bit of a mess because I've been amending them as people have expressed their thoughts. One of the things I noticed in this proposed transition was that it requires a written offer. Written. Kind of like a lease, kind of like terms and conditions so that you know what you're agreeing to. But apparently that's only to persons who occupied the property as of the public notice and the original passing of the bylaw on April 16th. Last time I was here was the 23rd. So the bylaw, as I think we discussed before, was enacted before we got public opinion. So no wonder you're having to call us back to get input on amendments. You already knew it violated human rights. Valente told you what you needed to do and you didn't do it. You had a plan to end chronic homelessness. You didn't follow it. You had 20 plus delegates, much like tonight. You didn't listen to any of us. But you want our opinion again, okay. I do wonder if anyone was actually surprised that the judge granted the injunction. So, written amendment, but only to the few residents who are still on site because they happen to be on site on an arbitrary day when it was cold and wet. The weather was a lot like today. When a portable was dropped off, a portable that are tax dollars that some of you are very upset about spending, was placed on site. That portable, which doesn't get used, it's not used as a cooling center. You had a delegate who is a resident on site who came here last summer to ask very nicely for you. Did calculations explaining how cost-effective it would be. You weren't interested. So when has that site been used? Because it's supposed to be used for conversations with residents, with their unsheltered workers, right? The time that I know that it was used, probably most, was when approximately 20 regional staff members were on site for the bin day that was mentioned in a previous delegation that went in the news media that allegedly porta potties were blocked, except for they weren't. There was like 20 staff members on site that day to move some bins. Well, maybe if someone put up signs with the proper times and dates so residents knew about it, you wouldn't have needed so many people to show up and be paid for that time. So, it's a pretty expensive staffing burden. Also, most of those 5 bins weren't really being used for most of the time they were on site. So that's a rental fee. So you've got the portable fee, the bin fees, egregious staffing. But back to the written agreements. What were you offering before? I hear apparently you were offering verbal agreements that nobody can look back on. Because you know what? I occasionally go back to my lease to check the terms and conditions in my lease so that I can make sure I'm obeying them and I understand. I might have reviewed that lease with somebody else before I signed it, especially back in the days before we had Ontario standard leases. But it seems there's a reason for suddenly documenting offers on paper to prove to the courts that something was done. Great. Housing's expensive to build, I hear that. Okay. Set aside a piece of land where people are allowed to go. Because without that provision, for a low barrier, no ID required, show up and you are allowed to be here 24/7, weekends, holidays, after hours. Place of last resort. Because do all of you know that there are social workers who have bought someone a sleeping bag and said, here, this is the best I can do for you for the night, and left them there? That's what happens. And you're going to take away that last resort where people are allowed to legally be. You've heard a few people tell you, well, let the chips fall where they may. Well, where are people supposed to go? Because previously it's been established that Karen Redmond's lawn is not an acceptable option.
Lynn, you're out of time. Do you want to sum up?
These people are not going to disappear unless you're going to take a very American tactic, round them up, disappear them. Is that the plan?
No.
Or you can choose a spot where people are allowed to be, because you can't make us disappear.
Thank you, Lynn. The next delegation, from here on, people registered after the time, and they will get 3 minutes. And the next delegation is Julian Ickham. Julian, welcome to the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
So I called First Connect, and they have no beds available for women. They have no beds available for non-binary people, and for people like myself with left ventricle hypertrophy or other serious life-threatening illnesses. There's no way for people to get there. So a human right is something someone has by virtue of being human. Anything else is a privilege. People have rights because they exist. This bylaw violates human rights. Everyone knows that in mediations, if you want a mediation to be successful, you want all the interested parties to be involved. That was not the case with this mediation. The only people that were allowed were the people who were granting, who were giving sentence statements, injunctions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of people who were participating in safety tent, in other sorts of programs at the site were not allowed to participate. No wonder the mediation failed. People don't like bullies. People are angry at the Fords for shutting down the safe consumption site without consultation. People are angry at Trump for invading Venezuela. What's happening here is bullying. We don't want bullying. We want we want sovereignty. We don't want people to be pushed outside of views. We want a place where people can live. If we want to have this Metrolink, we need a fair and just mediation where all parties that are affected are involved. We want accessible places. Tents aren't a solution. I agree with that. But having to sleep in the cold and possibly die isn't a solution either. We know from the investigation that was done on Herbs Road that people are beaten, people have their property stolen, people are exploited, vulnerable people are taken advantage of. During the winter, I have participated in many tent cities. It is especially during the winter that the city uses confidential informants and others to attack, destroy, burn, and otherwise make the tents inaccessible and put people in places where they cannot be reached, particularly people with leadership skills. If this council wants to be remembered as fair and just, not like Trump, not like Bush, then this bylaw needs to be thrown out. There needs to be a reasonable mediation where all affected parties are involved, and we need to respect people's human rights, especially their right to life. If I can't get a bed tonight, that's not just an accident. That's a person's life at risk. That is a human being, and we all have rights by virtue of being human. Just because we are
Julian, you're
human.
out of time if you want to just close off.
Yeah, don't shove poor people away. Poor people have as much rights as everyone else. This bylaw is discriminatory. This bylaw goes against every legal procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. I have no questions. The next delegate is Theo Zhu from Waterloo. Theo, are you online? Oh, in the audience? Welcome to the podium. You have 3 minutes.
We have heard a lot of lovely delegations here tonight, as well as a few less so. But overall, it's been heartwarming to see so many members of our community come out to advocate for the rights of our neighbors at 100 Vic. I don't have anything to say that hasn't already been said. But honestly, I don't believe anything that has been said today is news to council. People have been delegating at council and committee meetings against the site-specific bylaw since it was put in place. 2 judges have laid out extremely clearly why it is unconstitutional. I'm sure navigating this space as municipal level government is difficult. Although you purport to be our direct regional representatives, council is fundamentally at the behest of the provincial government. But between the plan to end chronic homelessness and the ongoing petition for a safe tenting bylaw, good solutions have been proposed to council and have been, by and large, ignored. All I really have to say here today is to every single one of you who is an elected representative here today, if you do not repeal the site-specific bylaw concerning 100 Vic and pass the safe tenting bylaw for all of the region of Waterloo, we will see you unelected. Thank you.
Thank you, Theo. The next delegation, I see no questions. The next delegation is Ambarish Suresh. Are you in the audience? Welcome to the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening to everyone. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge and comment that we as a region have taken steps to address homelessness. And there are some things that definitely we can be proud about. That being said, I do not think this bylaw and its amendments is one of them. I'll cut to the chase. I only have 3 minutes, but I guess the main question is, do we have a meaningful increase in housing capacity since the time that this bylaw has been litigated? We know from the 2023 case that one of the main sticking points is that there needs to be more number of beds and also accessible and quality beds. Can we really say that there's been an increase? Because we know from the 2025 case that the Waterloo region has accepted that there are simply not enough beds to accommodate all the unhoused population in the region. So what's the plan with the bylaw then? Because 100 Vic, what essentially it is it's a shelter of last resort. It's no barriers, anyone can go there and stay. So unless we have a plan to either permanently build capacity to house the unhoused population and or address the root causes that cause people to become unhoused, there will always be people coming to 100 Vic or places like 100 Vic. So this bylaw does not propose a long-term solution to the problem we are facing. Another thing I would like to address is there's serious issues. I have serious issues with the definition or how the bylaw chooses to define what a resident is. It seems to artificially restrict residents to a very small amount when there are, in reality, many more people there. It doesn't make much sense that we have these two classes of residents, people who were there before this arbitrary date and after this arbitrary date. It's not like the bite of being unhoused is felt more by people who are there before April 16th. And somehow people came after 16th don't feel precarity any less. If we really are serious about putting people first, then I do not think that this bylaw really cares to address it. It seems to me that, and I hope I'm wrong, I genuinely do hope I'm wrong. It seems to me that there are two ways that we can take as a region to solve the issue. The bylaw, one is to create permanent housing solutions, or we could just play around with words and decrease the amount of people who are supposed to be there in 100 Wick, and then pat ourselves on the back when we house the 3 to 4 people who are somehow classified as the existing residents. I genuinely hope that this is not the way that we want to move as a region, and instead we can put our efforts into permanently housing the population. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for delegating. The next delegate is Valerie Morris, Kitchener. Valerie. Welcome to the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
So I turned it off, okay. I'm here as a new resident of Kitchener for 1 year, a human being, and a taxpayer. I remember when I first became aware of the issue of homelessness as a child, and my dad saying to me, "More people than you know are a paycheck or illness away from homelessness." And that person you see lying on a grate to keep warm, they're someone's child, someone's parent, someone's sibling, someone's friend. They're a human being. So here we are in 2026, still debating about homelessness, what to do, showing the same lack of political will at resolving this fundamental human rights issue. I cannot imagine it getting worse, but it is. Now we are criminalizing folks for having nowhere else to go. How can we actually consider causing further hardship on folks who are living in an already precarious situation? Instead, we're here basically discussing their right to exist. If one is so unfortunate as to not have affordable housing in this city. Waterloo region has one of the highest rates of unsheltered homelessness in the country, I understand, and at least 43% unhoused residents live completely outside. I ask you to reject this bylaw and not evict and displace folks at the encampment and consider alternatives. I ask that Council act now to respond to this crisis and ensure that no one in Waterloo region is criminalized for simply trying to survive without a home. These folks are our neighbors, residents of the city and region like you and I. If unhoused people have nowhere to shelter themselves and attempt to find shelter on public land, they face police intervention, harassment, displacement, among other things, creating a lot of trauma, increased risk of death. We all know this. I don't have a lot new to say. Adequate was the word that stood out to me in the bylaw. Why do we have to settle for adequate? What does that mean? Do not all people have the right to safety, health, and social support? If folks don't feel safe in these spaces, banning camping punishes homelessness. We need a camping bylaw. I understand London, our neighbors, have a different approach to this issue, and it can be done. We need multiple public camping spaces that can be served with resources in accessible places. Ensure basic sanitation, respect human rights. That's the minimum here while we try to figure out the larger systemic issue of homelessness.
Valerie, you're out of time if you want to sum up, or is that?
That's fine.
Thank you very much for coming in. I have no questions. The next delegate is Alex Coco from Kitchener. Alex, welcome to the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
There have been many incredible delegations so far that have said everything that I could ever say with much better articulation, so I'll keep this brief. Councillors, the situation for our unhoused neighbors in Waterloo region is dire. Sometimes it's difficult for us to appreciate that fact when we're fortunate enough to have a comfortable home to return to. It's very easy to forget how desperate the situation is when we don't see the constant violence of poverty. Councillors, I believe the region's promises for temporary housing of residents is simply inadequate. The provisions laid out in the individual housing plans do not solve the underlying issues of chronic homelessness or account for the transient nature of residents at 100 Vic. Several of the previous delegates and written correspondences have already delved into this issue in much more detail. We all want good transit for the region, but it does not have to come at the cost of one of our most vulnerable populations. The most effective solution, the most humane, the most proactive solution for our unhoused neighbors is permanent and stable housing, not a politically convenient and unconstitutional mass eviction campaign. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming in. The next delegation is Chris Varga from Kitchener. Chris, are you here? Welcome to the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
I would like to take this time to enumerate the contradictions which are staring us in the face. Contradiction number 1. Everyone here wants homelessness to go away, and yet government legislation going back to vacancy decontrol in 1997, which incentivized landlords to evict long-term tenants right up to the latest legislation, Bill 60, has made it easier to evict tenants. As long as we are pinpointing the problem as being the hapless homeless themselves, rather than the inequitable legislation which favors landlords and investment trusts, we are pushing marginally housed people further and further out on a limb until they too join the growing homeless population. Contradiction number 2. Another contradiction is the idea that this council sincerely believes that housing the last 2 homeless people deemed worthy of housing help, that it has then done its duty. Surely there are more unhoused people equally in need. And come spring, will the region again be closing down the extra wintertime beds, forcing people out into the street? Contradiction number 3. Local governments are embarrassed that our region is represented for all to see as a third world country with homelessness and desperate makeshift attempts at housing. But with the closure of this centralized location where people have been able to find safety and supports, where do we stand? By dispersing the homeless who seek aid and services, how are we assisting the homeless and helping them with their needs? We hate to see ourselves represented by our failures, but as a society, we have failed the people who need our help the most, and we refuse to own it. Which brings me to contradiction number 4. Many people, among them perhaps councillors here, some councillors here, sincerely believe that the visuals which the campsite sites provide and the inconvenience which campers sometimes hinder the housed public's recreational use is a greater offense than the assault on human dignity and human rights, which is foisted on the homeless every minute of the day. Contradiction number 5. There are vacant buildings and vacant sites everywhere, as well as unoccupied units, including recently built ones, which were prioritized to fuel a condo market which has no use for ordinary people and low-income folks. Indeed, has been displacing them from their own housing via gentrification. This glut of condos has served whom exactly? Contradiction number 6. In the 80s and 90s, government stopped building socialized housing, yet government expects the homeless living outdoors and in shelters to find housing on their own in a market in which rental rates have been steadily rising. Contradiction number 7.
Chris,
is that
you're out of
all
time.
Band-Aid solutions which don't address the problem directly? Okay, contradiction 7, is that all Band-Aid solutions which don't address, I have important things to say here, okay? Give me another minute. Contradiction number 7 is that all Band-Aid solutions, I know you want to cut down the evening and this is irrelevant to you, but I'm going to finish. I need another minute. Contradiction number 7 is that all Band-Aid solutions which don't address the problem directly are costly and are allowing the problem to perpetuate. At the end of this evening, Council will congratulate itself for having successfully pushed the problem down the road and, if possible, out of sight. But it will also have revealed where the priorities of the Council lie. To recap, I'll summarize that
Chris, you're out of
and
time.
others
You've
have
done
said.
your,
The goal here is to ignore the problem, to perpetuate the problem by refusing to see the government's own role in the creation of homelessness, to celebrate a hollow victory, because closing the current campsite solves nothing. We are here to plead with you to take an enlightened stance and to embrace a leadership role for a better future, which turns the tide and doesn't take a business as usual approach. So that people
Madam
can
Chair,
look back and
Madam
say,
Chair, we have a recess.
here in Waterloo
Okay.
region,
We're going
we
to
do
take a
things
5-minute
differently.
recess,
We
everybody.
see
Recess.
the root
Thank you.
cause of the problems and are willing to act. Foremost of all, we will show, not just say,
Would everybody please resume their seats? And if you have a conversation, you can take it outside, out of respect for the delegations who have not yet done their presentation. The next delegation is Adrian Hastings-Fuhr from Waterloo. Adrian, are you here? Welcome to the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Wow, that was some kind of something, some passion, right? You got me up here. I've never been up here before, my first time caller, long time listener. Yeah, you got that one. Okay, good. I'm missing supper for this. I've got 2 kids at home. I want to be with them. I don't want to be here, right? Do you want to be here? Well, you're being paid to. Thank you. Do you guys want to be here? You do, yes. Thank you, Kelly.
So,
most of you don't.
I'm
okay?
going to ask you.
All right?
I'm going to ask you to address council, please.
Oh, who should I address? Sorry.
Council.
Thank you, Mrs. Redmond. All right, perfect. Okay, I'm focusing. So I should address council. We've got Doug Craig. We've got Mayor Verbanovic is.
We have some colleagues virtually.
Oh, you're here. Hi, Mayor Verbanovic. Okay, and who else should be here? Everyone else is here. Great. My time's not up. Okay, what am I trying to say here? Well, obviously, we're not going to charge homeless people $5,000, obviously, so we can kick that one right out, no problem. Who wants to charge them $5,000? Okay, not me. And obviously, we're not getting anyone going April 1st, I guess, right? That we can't. The judge said no. I'm rambling. I said I wouldn't ramble. So, I'm mad. Let's kick them out. Let's get rid of. I don't want anyone at 100 Vic. You don't. That's why. We don't want anyone at Vic. We want them in a safe space. So where's that safe space? Lots of different spaces. We need to create those safe spaces. I don't know that we're here to debate that right now. I think we're just here to debate these 2 bylaw amendments. So on Friday, please don't amend the bylaw. But as a grander thing, let's build more housing, obviously, is a first step or not a first step. I don't know. Where am I going to go if I have no house, no nothing, whatever? An encampment, I guess. So let's create safe encampments. So safe encampments, we're not amending these bylaws. We're not charging anyone money. Can we agree on that? Safe encampments. We want the encampments safe. We don't need the bylaws amended. That's wasting all our time. I've got to go home and eat, right? Okay. I'm missing pickleball for this. You guys love pickleball? Someone loves pickleball in here. I'm missing pickleball for this. Doug Craig is falling asleep there. He wants, what? Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Adrian,
I'm not falling
I'd
asleep, please.
Fair.
No,
Sorry,
I'm
I
tired
retract
of
that
this.
statement. Anyway, bottom line, we don't need to amend
ridiculing
anything.
council on a continual basis. We're here to listen and to try to do the very best we can.
Right, and Abe
you
had
need
very
to
good
act your
points.
age, okay?
Pardon?
Okay, I'm going to ask, we're not going to.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
We are not going to debate the delegation.
Fair enough. Abe had great points, right? And he's a typical taxpayer. I'm a typical taxpayer. We got to do something. The something is creating more, but we'll talk about that later. Bottom line is, let's not do these silly amendments and let's go home and have dinner.
Thank you, Adrian. Your time is up. The next delegation is Sophia Wadja from Kitchener. Oh, Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Adrian, did you and I speak earlier today?
Yes, sorry. I'm late to this party. I didn't know this was happening, but anyway, I'm here now.
Okay, so I definitely want to thank you for coming in and speaking and having that very fruitful discussion earlier today, very productive discussion, I think. And you raised some valid points there. I just want to say, I really wish you would have raised those points here today in your 3 minutes. But thank you for coming and speaking. And it can be an intimidated space, but I appreciate the phone call we had earlier today. Thank you.
I appreciated that too.
Okay, thank you. And Sophia, I apologize. You're up next, and you have 3 minutes. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you. I won't use up the 3 minutes. I decided not to say what I was going to say today just because all the points have already been mentioned by everybody with much more detail and eloquence I could possibly try to. I just wanted to use this chance to add my voice to everybody who is feeling the same way, that this development should not come at the cost of the residents. Not sure if it's ignorance, incompetence, or malice that makes us come back here all the time, but we know and we have known that you have means and you have ways to take care of the residents of 100 Vic, and we all expect you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no questions. Colleagues, that is the end of the delegations. We do have correspondence. I would draw your attention. I know you've all read it. We've received it electronically, but from Kevin White as well as Phil O'Donnell. And I would now entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Wolf. I don't know if everybody's on eScribe, are you? Or do you want to do a show of, is there anybody who objects to adjournment? I see that Councillor Nowak is enthusiastically not objecting. Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned.